The desert wind howled like a wounded animal, whipping sand across the cracked asphalt of Route 17, where the sun hung low and merciless, painting the horizon in blood-red streaks. In the shadow of a rusted gas station sign that creaked like old bones, a small boy no older than 8 huddled against the pump, his thin frame shaking not from the chill of dusk, but from the terror etched into his wide, tear-streaked eyes. He clutched a faded backpack like a lifeline, his sneakers scuffed and muddy from hours of wandering or running. The station was abandoned, its windows shattered, and the only sound besides the wind was his ragged sobs, echoing into the empty expanse. No cars passed. This stretch of road was forgotten, a vein in the earth's scarred hide where help rarely ventured. From the boy's vantage, the world had narrowed to this nightmare. Earlier that afternoon, he'd slipped away from the dusty trailer park on the outskirts of Willow Creek, chasing the faint hope of finding his mother after another night of raised voices and slamming doors. But the desert swallowed directions, and now, as shadows lengthened, he imagined monsters in every tumbleweed. A distant rumble pierced the air, not thunder, but engines, deep and thunderous, growing louder like an approaching storm. Headlights pierced the gloom, a convoy of motorcycles slicing through the haze, their chrome gleaming like polished steel under the dying light. 50 strong, they rolled in formation, leather vests patched with the emblem of wings intertwined with iron chains. The Iron Oath Riders, a brotherhood forged in the fires of forgotten wars and unbreakable vows. Leading the pack was Ethan Hale, a man whose face bore the map of battles long past, a jagged scar tracing his jawline from a roadside bomb in some distant sand-swept hell, eyes like weathered granite that had seen too many dawns without sleep. At 45, Ethan rode with the weight of ghosts. His own brother lost to the same war that had claimed Ethan's youth, a promise whispered over a hospital bed to watch over the fallen man's family, a vow he'd buried under layers of engine grease and midnight rides. The convoy slowed as the lead bike spotted the boy, tires crunching gravel in a synchronized halt that raised a cloud of dust like a veil lifting on a stage. Ethan killed his engine first, the silence sudden and profound, his boots hitting the ground with a thud that echoed his resolve. The others fanned out, a wall of denim and determination, their presence alone enough to ward off the encroaching dark. "Hey, kid." Ethan's voice cut through the quiet, rough as sandpaper, but laced with a gentleness honed from years of coaxing life back into the broken. He approached slowly, hands open, the angel tattoo on his forearm catching the last rays of sun, an ethereal figure with wings spread wide, inked in black and faded blue, a tribute to the brother who'd called him Guardian in their final moments. The boy flinched at first, scrambling back against the pump, but Ethan's gaze held no threat, only the steady anchor of someone who'd stared down worse than fear. "You lost? What's your name?" The boy wiped his nose on his sleeve, voice a whisper swallowed by the wind. "Liam, my mom's. She's not home. I got scared." The words tumbled out. Fragments of a home fractured by absence. His father gone to the bottle, his mother vanishing into the night shifts at the mill, leaving Liam to fend against the echoes of arguments that shook the thin walls. Ethan knelt to his level, the scent of leather and exhaust mingling with the boy's faint tang of sweat and dust. Around them, the riders dismounted quietly, forming a protective circle, their engines ticking as they cooled, a symphony of restrained power. One of the bikers, a burly veteran named Marcus with a beard like tangled wire, scanned the horizon, his hand resting on the handlebars. "No one's coming out here by accident, Ethan. Kid's been through it." Ethan nodded, his mind flashing to his own childhood in a similar nowhere town, promises made to a father who never returned from the oil fields. He extended a hand, and after a heartbeat, Liam took it, small fingers gripping like roots seeking soil. "You're safe now. We're heading back to base. Got room for one more." Tell us about your mom. We'll find her. As the convoy reformed, Liam perched on the back of Ethan's bike, helmet too big and sliding over his eyes, the roar of engines drowning his lingering whimpers. The ride back to Willow Creek was a blur of wind-whipped freedom, the desert blurring into the neon glow of the town's edge. They pulled into the Iron Oath compound, a sprawling lot ringed by chain link and floodlights, where Harleys stood like sentinels, and the air hummed with the low chatter of men and women who'd chosen this family over blood. Inside the main hall, a converted warehouse with walls lined in memorabilia, dog tags, faded photos, a mural of wings against a stormy sky. The riders gathered, passing water and sandwiches to the wide-eyed boy. Liam sat at a scarred wooden table, the warmth of the space seeping into his bones, the clink of bottles and murmur of voices a balm against his solitude. His eyes kept drifting to Ethan's arm, where the tattoo flexed with each gesture, the angel's wings seeming to stir in the firelight from the old stone hearth. Finally, as the group settled into easy camaraderie, Liam's curiosity broke through. "Mister, what's that angel on your arm? Does it fly?" The room hushed, the crackle of the fire the only sound. Ethan paused, his fork midway to his mouth, the weight of the question pulling at threads long buried. He rolled up his sleeve fully, revealing the intricate lines. The angel not fierce, but serene, holding a broken chain in one hand, a lantern in the other. "This?" Ethan's voice was low, carrying the timbre of confession. "She was my brother's promise to me. Back when we were kids, fighting in places that eat souls, he said if anything happened, I'd be the light for those left behind. Said I was his guardian angel, even if I didn't believe it. Inked it the day he didn't come home. Reminds me every ride that some vows don't die with the person, they ride on." Silence fell like a curtain, the riders exchanging glances heavy with shared scars. Marcus nodded slowly, his own ink, a matching set of chains, visible under his rolled cuff. A woman named Clara, a nurse who'd patched more than wounds in her time with the club, placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. "Your turn to make a promise now, kid. To your mom, to yourself. We help with that." In that moment, as the fire danced shadows across faces marked by loss, Ethan felt the old vow stir anew, not just for his brother, but for this boy, a spark in the dark. The convoy that had rolled out for a routine patrol now carried a deeper charge, engines ready to roar for justice unspoken. Liam's eyes shone not with tears, but with the first flicker of trust, binding them in a circle stronger than steel. What do you think that promise meant to Ethan? Drop your thoughts below, and let's see how this tale unfolds. The fire in the hearth popped like distant gunfire, casting flickering shadows across the Iron Oath hall, where the air hung thick with the scent of aged wood, coffee brewing on a hot plate, and the faint metallic tang of oiled chains. Liam's small hand still rested on the table's edge. His gaze locked on Ethan's tattoo, as if it held the key to unraveling his own tangled fears. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable but profound, like the pause before a storm breaks. Ethan lowered his sleeve slowly, the fabric whispering against his skin, and leaned back in his chair, the wooden legs creaking under his weight. Around the table, the riders, hardened souls with stories etched into their postures, waited, their faces illuminated in the warm glow, eyes reflecting a quiet understanding that words alone couldn't bridge. Clara broke the hush first, her voice soft as she slid a mug of hot chocolate toward Liam, steam curling like morning mist. "Drink up, little one. It's got marshmallows. Makes everything a bit sweeter." She was in her late 30s, with calloused hands from years in the ER, and a vest patched with a red cross intertwined with the club's wings, a symbol of her dual vows, to heal and to protect. Liam sipped tentatively, the warmth spreading through him, easing the knot in his chest. Ethan watched, his mind drifting back to the promise that ink commemorated. Not just his brother's dying words, but the chain of oaths that bound the Iron Oath Riders. They'd started as a ragtag group of vets in the dusty lots of forgotten bases, swearing to never leave a man behind, even after the uniforms came off. Now, that creed extended to strays like this boy, pulled from the desert's jaws. "Tell us more about your mom, Liam," Ethan said, his tone steady, pulling the boy back to the present. The others leaned in subtly, forming an unspoken circle of sanctuary. Liam's eyes darted, then settled, the hot chocolate loosening his tongue. "Her name's Sophia. She works late at the old mill by the river. Last night she said she'd be home by supper, but there were men, loud voices outside the trailer. She told me to hide, then she was gone. I waited, but the door stayed shut, and the truck didn't come back." His voice cracked on the last word, the memory painting his face pale. Marcus grunted, rubbing his beard, the sound like gravel under tires. "Men, huh? Suited types or roughnecks?" Liam shook his head. "Suits. One had a badge, shiny, like it meant something bad." The word badge hung in the air, igniting a flicker of tension among the riders. Ethan exchanged a glance with Marcus, the scar on his jaw tightening as old instincts stirred. Willow Creek wasn't just any nowhere town. It sat on the edge of a web of corruption, where the mill's owners skimmed wages and worse, and local law turned blind eyes for the right price. Ethan had seen it before, families torn apart by debts that weren't theirs. Whispers of threats disguised as evictions. His own ghosts whispered warnings. The brother who died not just in war, but chasing justice back home, only to find the system rigged against the likes of them. "Sounds like trouble we know too well," Ethan murmured, standing to pace the room, his boots echoing on the concrete floor. The mural on the wall seemed to watch him, wings poised, as if ready to lift the weight. Outside, the night had fully claimed the compound, floodlights cutting through the darkness like search beams, illuminating rows of bikes lined up like faithful hounds. Ethan stepped to the door, pushing it open to let in the cool rush of desert air, carrying hints of sage and distant rain. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent witnesses to human frailties. He pulled out his phone, an old burner with a cracked screen, and dialed a contact from the club's network, a mechanic at the mill who'd traded favors for protection before. The line crackled, then connected. "Jenna. It's Ethan. Got a kid here, his mom's Sophia from the night shift. Missing since yesterday. Any word?" Her voice came hushed, urgent. "Yeah. Boss man's goons hauled her off after closing. Said something about debts and a new protection racket. Cops are in on it. Deputy Harlan's crew. Watch your back. They're cracking down on outsiders." Ethan hung up, the information settling like lead in his gut. Harlan, a name that evoked sneers in the hall, a crooked badge who'd once tried to shake down the club for road fees, only to back off when the riders showed their numbers. But this felt bigger, a shadow creeping over the town like oil on water. He returned to the table, where Liam had dozed off against Clara's arm, exhaustion claiming him at last. "Sophia's in deep," Ethan said to the group, voice low. "Harlan's involved. We ride at first light, scout the mill, shake some trees." Nods rippled around the room, a chorus of silent assent. This wasn't just about one woman, it was the oath in action, pulling them into the fray for the vulnerable, the forgotten. As the riders dispersed to prep, checking engines with rhythmic clanks, loading saddlebags with essentials, Ethan lingered, watching Liam sleep. The boy's face, softened in repose, mirrored his own at that age before loss carved its lines. The angel tattoo itched faintly, a reminder that promises weren't burdens, but engines driving forward. Marcus clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You lead in this charge for the kid or the brother?" Ethan met his eyes, the fire's reflection dancing in them. "Both, and whatever comes next." Dawn was hours away, but the compound buzzed with purpose. The low hum of preparation like a heartbeat quickening. In the quiet hours before the ride, Ethan sat alone by the hearth, sketching a rough map of the mill on a napkin, the pencil scratching softly. Memories surfaced unbidden. The day his brother inked the matching chain on his own arm, laughing over cheap beer, vowing to build something unbreakable after the war. "We're the light in the chain. Eth," he'd said, "break one link, we all fall, but we don't break." Now, with Liam's fate intertwined, Ethan felt that light flicker brighter, a call to redeem what time had tarnished. The first hints of grey touched the horizon, engines stirring like awakening beasts. The convoy would roll again, not for glory, but for the quiet honour of keeping word. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The first blush of dawn crept over the compound like a hesitant promise, turning the sky from ink black to bruised purple, where stars faded one by one against the relentless march of light. Ethan stood at the edge of the lot, his breath visible in the crisp air, the scent of dew-kissed sage mingling with the sharp bite of cooling metal from the bikes. He'd barely slept, the napkin's rough map folded in his vest pocket, lines etched like veins, leading to the mill's shadowed perimeter. Around him, the Iron Oath riders stirred to life, engines coughing to wakefulness, the low growl building into a symphony that vibrated through the gravel underfoot. Marcus wiped grease from his hands on a rag, his broad frame silhouetted against the rising sun, while Clara checked her medical kit with practiced efficiency, the zipper's rasp cutting through the morning hush. Liam had woken with the first light, rubbing sleep from his eyes as Clara helped him into a spare jacket, too big for his frame, its leather sleeves dangling like protective wings. He clung to Ethan's side now, watching the preparations with a mix of awe and lingering fear. The compound's floodlights switching off to reveal the world in natural tones. Rusty chain-link fences, stacks of tires like ancient monoliths, and the mural's wings seeming to stretch toward the horizon. "Are we going to get my mum?" Liam asked, his voice small but threaded with hope, the hot chocolate from last night still sweet on his breath. Ethan knelt, meeting the boy's gaze, the scar on his jaw catching the light like a silver thread. "Yeah, kid, we're going, but it's not a game. Stay close and remember, these rides are about keeping what's right." The convoy assembled in tight formation, 50 bikes gleaming under the awakening sun, chrome accents flashing like drawn blades. Ethan mounted his Harley, the leather seat creaking under him, and Liam settled behind, tiny arms wrapped around his waist, helmet secured with a click that echoed finality. The engine roared to life beneath them, a deep thrum that resonated in Ethan's chest, stirring the angel tattoo, as if it pulsed with the machine's heart. Marcus revved his own bike nearby, a nod passing between them, unspoken strategy. Scouts ahead, main group in reserve, eyes on the river road that snaked toward the mill. Clara rode shotgun on a sidecar rig, her kit strapped secure, a beacon of calm amid the building tension. With a signal from Ethan's raised fist, the pack rolled out, tires crunching over the gate's threshold, the dust plume rising like a banner of defiance against the sleeping town. Route 17 unfurled before them, the asphalt cracked and sun-baked, flanked by scrub brush that whispered in the wind's gentle push. The ride was meditative at first, the convoy's rhythm syncing breaths and heartbeats, the desert's vastness swallowing individual worries. Ethan felt the boy's grip tighten on curves, Liam's cheek pressed against his back, inhaling the mingled scents of exhaust and worn leather. Memories flickered unbidden. His brother on a similar road, post-deployment, promising to shield the weak from the world's grind. That vow had birthed the club, turning survivors into sentinels. Now, with Sophia's shadow looming, Ethan wrestled the ethical knot, Ride hard and confront Harlan's web, or pull back, preserving the fragile peace the riders had carved. The law's corruption gnawed at him, a reminder that badges could chain more than protect. But honor demanded action, quiet and unyielding. As they crested the rise overlooking Willow Creek, the mill came into view, a hulking skeleton of rusted silos and conveyor arms frozen in mid-motion, the river below murmuring like a conspirator. Smoke trailed lazily from a chimney, the air carrying the acrid tang of processed ore and damp earth. Ethan signaled a pull-off, the convoy halting in a concealed dip, engines idling to whispers. He dismounted, helping Liam down, the boy's sneakers sinking into soft dirt. "Stay with Clara," Ethan instructed, his voice low, eyes scanning the tree line for watchers. Marcus joined him, binoculars in hand, the lenses glinting as he swept the perimeter. Guards at the main gate, 2, maybe 3, suits, not uniforms, but that badge Liam mentioned. Harlan's stink all over it. From their vantage, the mill's yard bustled with early shifts, workers in coveralls shuffling like ghosts, trucks rumbling in with loads that belched dust clouds. Ethan spotted a side office, its windows tinted, where shadows moved behind blinds. Deals in the dim, no doubt. Jenna's words echoed, protection racket, debts fabricated to squeeze the life from families like Sophia's. His jaw set, the scar pulling tight. This wasn't abstract. It was the slow poison of greed eroding the town's bones, leaving kids like Liam adrift. Clara approached, Liam at her side, the boy pointing tentatively. "That's where she works. The door by the blue truck." Ethan's hand rested on his shoulder, a grounding weight. "Good eye. We're gonna check it out. Quiet, no storms yet." They split, Ethan and Marcus on foot, slipping through the underbrush like shadows, the river's rush masking their steps. The air grew heavier here, laced with the oily reek of machinery and faint underlying rot, perhaps from runoff or something fouler. Close now, they crouched behind a stack of pallets, peering through gaps. Inside the office, voices filtered out, muffled but sharp, a man's bark, authoritative and laced with threat. "Sophia's leverage. Kid'll bring her around. Pay up or we take more." Harlan's timbre, oily as the river slime. Ethan's blood heated, but he held, fist clenched around a chain from his pocket. The club's token, cool metal grounding his rage. Justice wasn't a brawl, it was exposing the rot, letting truth's light burn it clean. A door swung open, and Sophia emerged, her face gaunt under the morning glare, clothes rumpled with signs of strain, wrists marked faintly as if from rough handling. She carried a clipboard, movements mechanical, but her eyes, sharp, searching, darted toward the river, hope flickering brief. Ethan rose slightly, a whistle low on his lips, but Marcus pulled him back as a guard rounded the corner, radio crackling. The moment stretched, tension coiling like a spring, the desert wind holding its breath. Sophia paused, sensing something, her gaze lifting toward their hiding spot. Connection sparked, unspoken, a promise in the air, fragile as dawn mist. Back at the convoy, word spread in hushed tones, the riders' faces hardening with resolve. Ethan returned, mind racing with plans. Infiltrate at shift change, extract without fire, confront Harlan on his terms. Liam's eyes widened at the news. "She's there. We can get her." Ethan nodded, the angel on his arm seeming to watch. "We will. But it means facing down what's broken in this town. For her, for you, for all of us carrying old weights." The sun climbed higher, baking the earth as the group remounted, engines purring with restrained fury. The ride back would be short. The real storm brewed at the mill's gates, where loyalty would test its chains against corruption's grip. In the compound's shadow, as they prepped for the return push, Ethan felt the vow renew, not just ink, but fire in his veins, binding stranger to stranger in the quiet forge of honor. The day stretched ahead, heavy with choices, but the riders rolled as one, wings unfurled against the gathering clouds. The sun clawed higher into the sky, turning the desert air into a shimmering haze that distorted the horizon like a fever dream. Ethan gunned the throttle as the convoy surged back toward the mill, the pack cutting through Willow Creek's outskirts with a low, purposeful rumble that turned heads in the sparse morning traffic. Truckers pausing at stoplights, their eyes widening at the ironclad formation. Dust devils danced in their wake, swirling like restless spirits, while the river's distant murmur grew into a steady roar, guiding them closer to the heart of the trouble. Liam's arms squeezed tighter around Ethan's midsection, the boy's breath quick and shallow against the wind, carrying the faint sweetness of uneaten breakfast. Ethan felt it all, the vibration of the engine sinking with his pulse, the weight of the napkin map pressing against his chest, the angel tattoo a silent sentinel under his sleeve. They pulled up short of the mill's perimeter, tucking the bikes into a dry wash lined with thorny mesquite. Engines cut to silence that amplified the lap of water against concrete pilings. The air here was thicker, laced with the sour edge of industrial runoff and the faint, oily smoke from the silos, where conveyor belts groaned like weary giants. Ethan dismounted first, his boots sinking into the soft bank, and lifted Liam down, the boy's face flushed from the ride, eyes scanning the hulking structure with a mix of dread and determination. Clara was already unpacking her kit, her movements precise, while Marcus scanned the tree line with binoculars, the lenses clicking softly as he adjusted focus. "Guards doubled up since dawn," he muttered, passing the view to Ethan. "Harlan's not playing subtle. Got a black SUV parked by the office. Plates muddied like they're hiding sins." Ethan nodded, the scar on his jaw pulling taut as he studied the scene. Workers milling about the yard in clusters, their coveralls stained with the day's first labors, casting wary glances at the suited figures barking orders. Sophia was visible now, near the loading docks, her posture rigid as she directed a pallet, but her movements betrayed the strain, shoulders hunched, a subtle limp suggesting recent rough handling. No overt marks marred her appearance, but the way she avoided eye contact with the guard spoke volumes, a quiet testament to the invisible chains binding her. Ethan's mind raced through the ethical maze, storm in and risk escalation, drawing Harlan's full wrath on the town, or play it smart, peeling back layers of deceit without shattering the fragile balance the riders had maintained. The oath demanded justice, not chaos, truth as the blade, loyalty as the shield. "Plan simple," Ethan said, gathering the core group in a tight huddle behind the wash's lip, voices hushed against the river's flow. "Marcus and I go in as suppliers, fake manifest for scrap parts. Clara, you and a couple others hang back with Liam, cover the exit. No guns, no scenes. We talk Sophia out if we can, expose Harlan's game on the way." Nods rippled through, the riders' faces set like forged steel, their vests' patches catching the light, a reminder of vows etched deeper than ink. Liam tugged at Ethan's sleeve, his small voice cutting through. "What if they won't let her go?" Ethan knelt, the gravel biting into his knee, and met the boy's gaze, the desert wind tugging at their hair. "Then we remind them what a promise means. Keeps you standing when everything else crumbles. Your mom's strong. We'll match that." Slipping into rolls, Ethan and Marcus shouldered duffels stuffed with harmless gear, wrenches, chains, a clipboard with scribbled orders, and approached the side gate, the chain link rattling under their touch. The guard, a stocky man with a badge pinned crookedly to his shirt, eyed them suspiciously, his hand hovering near a radio. "Deliveries only through Maine. Who are you with?" Marcus stepped forward, his beard framing a disarming grin, voice gravelly but steady. "Hales Salvage. Called ahead for the foreman. Got parts for the east conveyor. Won't take but a minute." The guard hesitated, squinting at the fabricated papers, then waved them through with a grunt, the gate's squeal echoing like a warning. Inside the yard, the clamor enveloped them, forklifts beeping, metal clanging against metal, the air heavy with the tang of rust and sweat. Ethan spotted Sophia directing a load near the blue truck Liam had mentioned, her hair tied back in a hasty knot, face lined with exhaustion. He veered that way casually, Marcus flanking, their boots crunching over scattered gravel. "Morning, ma'am," Ethan called softly as they neared, keeping volume low amid the din. She turned, her eyes widening in recognition, the same spark from the riverbank, now blooming into guarded hope. "You? From the club? Liam, he's okay?" Her voice was a whisper, laced with urgency, hands trembling slightly as she set down her clipboard. "He's safe with our people," Ethan replied, positioning to block casual glances, the duffel at his feet a prop in their charade. "Heard about the trouble. Debts, Harlan's crew. We can get you out, but need the story. What's the play here?" Sophia glanced over her shoulder, the office's tinted windows looming like watchful eyes, then leaned in, words tumbling fast. "They fabricated loans on my account, said it's for the trailer's upkeep, but it's extortion. Harlan's running it with the mill boss, threatened Liam if I don't sign over shifts, maybe more. Last night they held me back, made it clear resistance costs." Her eyes darted to her wrist, faintly bruised under the sleeve, a subtle sign of the pressure. Ethan's jaw clenched, the angel tattoo burning like a brand, echoing his brother's vow. Light the dark, break no chains but the unjust. Before he could respond, a shadow fell across them. Harlan himself, striding from the office, his suit rumpled, badge glinting falsely under the sun. "Trouble with the load?" he drawled, eyes narrowing on Ethan, recognition flickering as old club tensions resurfaced. Marcus tensed, hand casual on the duffel, but Ethan held ground, voice even. "Just clarifying parts, deputy. Ma'am here's been a big help." Harlan's smile didn't reach his eyes, a predator's mask. "Club-type sticking noses where they don't belong. This town's got rules. Debts get paid or consequences roll in." The words hung, a veiled threat, the yard's noise fading to a tense hush around them. Sophia straightened, finding steel in her spine. "These men are helping Harlan, unlike some." The deputy's face darkened, radio crackling at his belt, but Ethan stepped forward, the napkin maps details fueling his calm. "Rules or rackets? We've got ears in town, workers talking, papers that don't add up. Let her walk, or we shine light on the shadows." Harlan paused, the ethical standoff crackling like static, his corruption teetering against the rider's unyielding honor. In that suspended moment, with the river rushing indifferent below, Ethan felt the promise expand, not just for Liam and Sophia, but for every fractured soul in Willow Creek, redemption forged in the quiet stand. The deputy backed off a fraction, gesturing sharply to a guard. "Shift break! Go cool off!" Sophia slipped away toward the gate, Ethan and Marcus covering her exit, hearts pounding in sync with the distant engines. Outside, the convoy waited, Liam's face lighting as she emerged, arms enveloping him in a fierce hug. But Harlan's glare followed, a storm brewing, the day's justice only half won. As the group mounted up, Ethan knew the ride home carried heavier stakes. Confrontation loomed, testing the chains of loyalty against the town's rotting core. If this story's gripping you, hit that like button to show your support. The engines thrummed to life like a collective heartbeat, shattering the fragile calm of the mill's yard as the iron oath riders pulled away from the dry wash, tires kicking up clods of earth that hung in the sun's glare like unspoken accusations. Sophia rode double with Clara on the sidecar rig, her arms wrapped protectively around Liam, who perched between them, his small frame finally easing into the rhythm of the convoy's roll. The boy's face, streaked with dust and relief, pressed against his mother's shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent of her faded floral soap mingled with the mill's lingering grit. Ethan led the pack once more, the Harley beneath him vibrating with restrained power, the wind whipping through his hair as Route 17 stretched back toward Willow Creek, a ribbon of cracked blacktop flanked by sun-bleached scrub that blurred into a haze of gold and shadow. Behind them, the mill receded like a fading nightmare, its silos standing sentinel against the climbing sun, but Ethan's rearview mirror caught the glint of that black SUV peeling out from the gate, Harlan's silhouette rigid at the wheel. The deputy's pursuit was deliberate, not frantic, a shark circling, testing waters before the strike. Ethan's scar itched under the rush of air, a phantom twinge echoing the ethical storm brewing in his gut. This wasn't over. Harlan's web of fabricated debts and coerced silences had ensnared too many in Willow Creek, turning neighbors into suspects and families into fragments. The rider's intervention had snapped one thread, but pulling it risked unraveling the whole rotten tapestry or drawing the corrupt deeper into the light. Honor demanded they stand firm, not flee, but the vow to protect the vulnerable tempered Ethan's throttle, keeping the convoy's pace measured, inviting the confrontation on open ground. The desert unfolded in relentless waves, the air thick with the dry rasp of sagebrush scraping against fenders and the faint acrid bite of exhaust trailing in their wake. Marcus rode flank, his bike a steady shadow to Ethan's left, radio clipped to his vest, crackling faintly with check-ins from the tail riders. SUVs hanging back, quarter mile, closing slow. Marcus's voice cut through the comms, gravelly over the wind's howl. Ethan nodded to himself, the angel tattoo flexing as he gripped the handlebars tighter, its wings a silent reminder of promises that outlasted bullets and badges alike. His brother's words resurfaced, whispered over crackling field radios, in forgotten wars. We don't run from the dark, Eth. We light it up, one truth at a time. That creed had forged the club from shattered vets into a chosen family, extending now to Sophia and Liam, strangers bound by the same fragile thread of trust. As they crested a low rise, the SUV surged forward, its engine a snarling counterpoint to the Harley's deeper roar, closing the gap with aggressive bursts that sent pebbles skittering across the asphalt. Ethan signaled a pull-off to a wide shoulder bordered by a sheer drop to the river below. The water's rush, a distant thunder that amplified the tension coiling in the air. The convoy fanned out in a defensive arc, bikes forming a wall of chrome and leather, engines idling to a low growl that vibrated through the ground like an earthquake's prelude. Sophia clutched Liam closer, her face pale against the sidecar's worn cushions, while Clara's hand rested on a concealed medkit, her eyes sharp as she scanned for threats. The SUV braked hard, tires screeching in protest, kicking up a cloud of dust that settled like a veil over Harlan as he stepped out, flanked by two deputies, burly figures with badges that gleamed falsely in the midday sun, hands hovering near holsters. "You think you can just ride in and play hero?" Harlan's voice boomed across the divide, laced with the oily confidence of unchecked power, his suit jacket flapping in the breeze like a tattered flag. He strode forward, boots crunching gravel, eyes locked on Ethan with the cold calculation of a man who'd bent the law to his will for years. The deputies hung back, forming a loose triangle, their postures screaming intimidation without crossing into overt aggression. Ethan dismounted slowly, the leather of his vest creaking as he stood tall, the convoy's riders mirroring him in a ripple of solidarity. Marcus at his side, arms crossed, Clara shielding the sidecar with her body. Liam peeked out, wide-eyed, but Sophia's whisper steadied him, her voice a quiet anchor amid the standoff. "We're not playing," Ethan replied, his tone even, carrying the weight of deserts crossed and vows unbroken, the wind tugging at his words like an impatient spectator. Sophia's free to go. Debts like that don't hold when they're built on lies. We've got statements from the mill, papers that show the racket. Your game's up, Harlan. Walk away, or the truth rolls out to every corner of this county. The deputy's face twisted, a flicker of rage breaking through the mask, but Ethan pressed on, the ethical blade honed sharp. This town's bleeding from your protection. Families scattered, kids like Liam left in the dust. My club, we keep promises. To each other, to the forgotten. What's yours worth when it chains the innocent? Harlan laughed, a hollow bark that echoed off the river's canyon walls, but his eyes darted to the rider's unyielding line, 50 strong, a fortress of shared scars and silent resolve. One deputy shifted uneasily, radio whispering static, while the other glanced at Sophia, recognition dawning of the human cost. The air thickened with the standoff's psychology, the sun beating down like judgment, sweat beading on brows as consciences wrestled. Marcus stepped up, his presence a grounded force, voice low. We've faced worse than badges in the sandpits overseas. Corruption's just another enemy. Expose it, and it crumbles, Clara added softly from the sidecar. Healing starts with letting go, for all of us. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. The river's murmur underscoring the fragile peace. Harlan's hand twitched toward his belt, but he halted, the weight of Ethan's words and the club's collective gaze piercing the armor of his authority. This ain't over, he spat, backing toward the SUV. Deputies following suit, their retreat a concession masked as tactical withdrawal. Engines revved in the distance, the black vehicle peeling away in a spray of dust, leaving the shoulder to the rider's quiet victory. Sophia exhaled, tears tracing clean paths through the grime on her cheeks, pulling Liam into a deeper embrace. Thank you, she whispered to Ethan, her voice breaking the hush, for seeing us. As the convoy reformed, mounting up with a synchronized ease born of battles past, Ethan felt the promise settle deeper, not a burden, but a legacy redeeming the losses that had scarred him. The ride back to the compound carried a lighter cadence, the desert wind now a gentle ally, carrying scents of wildflowers blooming defiant in the cracks. Willow Creek loomed ahead, its shadows lifting slightly under the sun's arc, but Harlan's parting glare lingered in Ethan's mind. A storm cloud on the horizon, promising one final test of the chains that bound them all. The angel on his arm seemed to stir with the engine's pulse, wings ready for the flight that would seal their redemption. Family forged in the fire of quiet courage. The desert sun dipped toward the jagged peaks, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across Route 17, turning the asphalt into a ribbon of molten gold veined with cracks. Ethan throttled back slightly, the Harley's engine settling into a steady purr that matched the easing rhythm of his breath. The wind now a cooling caress, carrying the faint earthy promise of evening rain. Sophia's reunion with Liam had woven a new thread into the Iron Oath's tapestry, her grateful whispers still echoing in his ears as the convoy rolled onward, bikes humming in unison like a chorus of resolved vows. But the rearview mirror told a different tale. Harlan's SUV had vanished around a bend, only to re-emerge farther back, its headlights flickering like a predator's eyes in the gathering dusk. The standoff on the shoulder had been a feint, a momentary retreat to regroup, and Ethan knew the deputy's pride wouldn't yield so easily. Corruption like Harlan's festered in the dark, lashing out when cornered, but the rider's light, forged from losses and loyalties, would meet it head-on. Marcus's voice crackled over the comms, cutting through the wind's whisper. He's gaining again, half a mile, pushing hard. Looks like he's called in backup. Dust trail behind him suggests more than one rig. Ethan glanced at the sidecar, where Sophia held Liam close, the boy's head nodding against her, exhaustion finally claiming him after the day's whirlwind. Clara rode steady beside them, her face a mask of quiet vigilance, medical kit strapped tight as if bracing for the inevitable. The air thickened with the scent of heated rubber and sage, the desert's vast emptiness amplifying every rev and rumble, turning the road into a stage for the final act. Ethan's mind raced through the ethical crossroads, escalate and risk drawing innocent blood, or draw Harlan out, forcing the truth into the open where justice could breathe. The angel tattoo on his arm warmed against the fading light, a tactile echo of his brother's creed: protect the light, even if it meant standing in the storm. As the compound's floodlights pierced the horizon like beacons, Harlan closed the gap, his SUV roaring alongside a pair of county cruisers that materialized from a side road, sirens silent but lights flashing in staccato warning. The convoy tightened formation instinctively, engines growling deeper as Ethan signaled a wide arc toward the compound's gates, the chain link looming like an iron embrace. Dust billowed in choking clouds, the cruisers boxing them in with aggressive swerves, forcing a slowdown that vibrated through every frame and bone. Ethan killed his throttle first, the pack following suit in a cascading halt that raised a wall of grit, the sudden silence broken only by the tick of cooling metal and the crunch of boots on gravel. Harlan's vehicle skidded to a stop at the forefront, doors slamming like judgments, the deputies fanning out with weapons drawn but low, intimidation's edge, not outright assault. "You riders think you're above the law?" Harlan bellowed, striding forward under the floodlight's harsh glare, his face a twisted map of fury and desperation, badge catching the beams like a false halo. The cruiser's drivers joined him, a trio of shadowed figures against the compound's mural, where wings seemed to unfurl in defiance. Sophia stepped from the sidecar, shielding Liam behind her, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "It's over, Harlan. The workers are talking. Your debts are forgeries, your threats recorded. Let it go." The deputies shifted uneasily, one glancing at his partner, the weight of complicity pressing like the desert's heat. Ethan dismounted, the group forming a living barrier, Marcus at his flank, Clara herding Sophia and Liam toward the gate. The air hummed with tension, thick as the ozone before thunder, sense of exhaust and sweat mingling with the compound's familiar tang of oil and hearth smoke. Ethan met Harlan's glare, his stance unyielding, the scar on his jaw a silver line in the light. "Law? You've twisted it into chains for folks like Sophia, extorting the broken to line your pockets. My brother's promise taught me better. Real authority lifts, doesn't crush. We've got the evidence, witnesses, logs from the mill, one call, and it spreads like wildfire." The words hung, a moral gauntlet, stirring doubts in the deputies' ranks. One holstered his sidearm subtly, eyes flicking to the compound's open gate, where more riders gathered, a silent tide of leather and resolve. Harlan's hand hovered near his radio, but his bluster cracked, voice dropping to a venomous hiss. "You meddling bikers, always poking at the order. This town's mine." Yet the conviction faltered, eroded by the unblinking eyes of the chosen family before him, their loyalty a fortress no badge could breach. The psychological fracture widened as Clara stepped forward, her nurse's calm a soothing counterpoint. "Deputy, you've seen enough wounds. Some heal, some scar deeper. Walk away, redeem what's left." Harlan's gaze darted, the cruiser's engines idling like hesitant hearts, the river's distant rush underscoring the fragility of his empire. In that suspended breath, Ethan extended the napkin map from his pocket, its scribbles a testament to quiet investigation. "Take it, see the threads you wove, or we hand it to the feds come morning." Harlan snatched it, crumpling the paper, but the act was surrender, his shoulders slumping as he barked orders to retreat. The vehicles peeled away, taillights fading into the night, leaving the compound in a hush, broken only by the gate's closing clang, a barrier sealed against the dark. Inside the hall, the fire roared anew, casting warm flickers across faces etched with relief and quiet triumph. Sophia knelt with Liam, their embrace a knot of mended threads, tears tracing paths of gratitude. "You gave us our promise back," she said to Ethan, voice soft as the hearth's glow. He nodded, rolling up his sleeve to reveal the angel once more, its wings serene in the firelight. The boy, awake now, reached out tentatively, tracing the ink. It kept us safe. The room murmured assent, the riders gathering close, veterans, healers, wanderers bound not by blood but by oaths that outlasted storms. Marcus clapped Ethan's back. Clara poured steaming mugs, the air rich with coffee and camaraderie, scars shared like badges of honor. As night deepened, Ethan stood by the mural, the wings mirroring his tattoo. A legacy renewed. Harlan's web would unravel under scrutiny, justice poetic in its exposure, redeeming the town's fractured soul. The promise that had pulled him from isolation now encircled this new family, a circle of light against cynicism's shadow. Engines rested silent outside, but the rider's spirit roared on, silent actions birthing legacies of lealtad, where loss forged unbreakable bonds. Willow Creek breathed easier, its hidden wounds beginning to heal under the stars' indifferent watch. Thank you for joining this journey of promises and redemption. If these tales of honor resonate with you, subscribe for more stories that light the way through the dark.